Today we're diving into the tricky topic of emotionally immature partners, especially when we're looking at why a husband might be acting immature.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a challenge when it seems like your partner is stuck, almost in a perpetual state of adolescence.
Right. It's like, um, the term man-child gets thrown around a lot, but that's really oversimplifying what's going
Yep,
on. It's not just about a lack of maturity. There's a whole interplay of societal expectations and unresolved personal issues.
totally. And we see that this idea of the man-child masks a lot of underlying struggles with adult responsibilities and managing emotions properly.
Mm. And one of the key points is that these behaviors aren't necessarily about a man being inherently bad. They're often tied to how society shapes a man's behavior from an early age.
Right, like how boys aren't encouraged to really express emotions, which in turn leads to these kinds of issues in adulthood.
Exactly. And that factor, combined with a lack of deep social support networks, means that they often struggle with resilience and critical coping skills when life gets
Yep,
challenging.
exactly. So then, when responsibilities pile up, like doing chores or handling bills, it's almost as if they shut down instead of facing the situation head on.
Right? And that often translates into behaviors like escapism, where they might dive into gaming or spending too much time online instead of tackling reality.
Yeah, exactly. That escapism is a big part of the picture. And it can be super frustrating for a partner who's trying to build a stable environment at home.
And on top of that, it's the way they often express, or rather fail to express, their emotions in a healthy way. Instead of really talking about how they feel, it can come out as, whiny criticism or even
Yeah,
tantrums.
that's a tough one. And then there's the lack of empathy. I mean, it's hard to connect when one partner simply isn't in tune with how another person is feeling.
Exactly. And that lack of empathy often underpins why, even when conflicts arise, communication spirals into criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. It's the kind of cycle that really does corrode a relationship over time.
So true. Speaking of that, the discussion around criticism, contempt, and defensiveness really highlights the toxic communication patterns identified by experts like Dr. John Gottman.
Yeah, Gottman even outlines how these behaviors can predict the breakdown of relationships. It's a roadmap of how emotional immaturity can lead to a whole host of issues, from stonewalling to constant defensiveness.
It's almost like watching a slow-motion train wreck. One minute you're negotiating responsibilities, and the next you're caught in a cycle of blame and withdrawal.
Exactly. And, what really breaks it down is how this lack of maturity not only hurts the partner who is stuck in the adolescent phase, but also creates a codependent
Yeah,
dynamic.
exactly. Right. Because then one partner ends up taking on, like, a parental role. Responding to babysitting every emotional need, it really sets up an unhealthy balance.
That's so true. And it's important to note that sometimes the partner on the receiving end might unintentionally enable that immaturity by stepping in to handle responsibilities. It's a classic case of codependence, sort of like playing the role of Wendy over and over again.
Absolutely, and that draining dynamic can leave both partners feeling stuck and overwhelmed with resentment eventually.
Hmm. And that brings us to some strategies discussed to address this. One of them is basically setting clear boundaries. It's about protecting your own well-being when you can't control another's actions.
Yeah, a firm boundary can really be a game changer. And it goes hand in hand with developing emotional literacy, like encouraging your husband to dial into what he feels by, simply asking, "How are you feeling now?" instead of letting negative patterns take over.
Right. Because if you can help him move away from just venting in quick bursts of criticism or even tantrums and start expressing his emotions constructively, that's a step towards growth.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But, what if he's not willing to see his issues? I mean, there are situations where even after clear boundaries are set, one partner remains stuck in this immature cycle.
That's a good point. And frankly, if he refuses to go to therapy or seriously try to understand his emotional challenges, then it can really escalate the imbalance in the relationship.
Yeah, That's definitely a tough spot. It almost sounds like, in those cases, the partner on the receiving end might have to, seriously evaluate if staying in that dynamic is really sustainable.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's a point where safeguarding your own mental health becomes the priority. Sometimes that means seeking professional guidance independently, even if your partner isn't game for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of professional support, the resources provided by experts at the Gottman Institute show how vital it is to transform communication, using tools like a gentle startup approach to address concerns rather than, triggering defensiveness.
Right. Like phrasing concerns as, I feel overwhelmed rather than, you never help, really shifts the conversation into more constructive territory. It's all about making the other person feel less attacked so they can actually, process what's going on.
Exactly, and the idea of repair attempts, those small gestures that try to ease tension, are crucial in stopping conflicts from escalating further.
Mhm. You know, the concept of bids for connection is also key. It's those small, everyday moments where a partner reaches out for a tiny bit of emotional affirmation. When those bids go ignored because the immature partner is, not fully present, the emotional
Yep,
distance only
definitely.
widens.
But here's something I might challenge a bit. Some might argue that focusing on changing the immature behavior only places the burden on the partner. Isn't it a bit unfair sometimes to expect someone to just transform overnight?
That's a fair point. I mean, emotional growth is a journey. You can't just switch it on. But the strategies here, like clear boundaries and seeking help, aren't about forcing change. They're about creating an environment that nudges towards growth.
I get that. Right, and sometimes it's about holding space for change while also being ready to step back if things don't improve.
Exactly. And that's where individual therapy or counseling can come in. It's not just to fix your partner, but to help you understand your own patterns and break away from any codependent behavior.
Yeah, self care takes on a whole new meaning in this context. Recognizing that you deserve a balanced relationship is, pretty empowering.
Absolutely. And, the Gottman Institute's insights really underline that if your partner continuously refuses to adapt, it might be necessary to consider the long-term implications for your emotional well-being.
Yep, that sounds about right. And at the end of the day, it is all about mutual respect and fostering a relationship where both parties are emotionally present. Right.
Precisely. It's like building a house. If one foundation is shaky from emotional immaturity, the whole structure is compromised. It needs work from both sides to, truly thrive.
I like that analogy. So, in wrapping up, it seems clear that while an emotionally immature partner can create many challenges, there are concrete steps one can take, from setting boundaries to actively engaging in communication practices that encourage growth.
Yeah. And remember, it takes courage to face these issues. But with effort, compassion, and the right support, even the most entrenched patterns can be shifted.
Absolutely. Thanks for this great discussion. It's a reminder that while relationships can be complex, understanding the dynamic is the first step towards creating a healthier, more balanced connection.
Right on. And for anyone listening who finds themselves dealing with these issues, know that it's okay to seek help and demand the respect and emotional security you deserve.
Definitely. Take care of yourself. Until next time, stay reflective and kind to yourselves and each other.